Hey guys, tonight we drift into the soft, putrid haze of 18th century Paris. The cobblestones are slick with history, some of it cultural, most of it biological. You're standing just beyond the Seine and the air smells like someone dumped a farmer's market, an open latrine, and a cheese cellar into a blender and hit ferment. There are no garbage trucks here, no street sweepers, no sanitation crews. You're on your own. And you, dear traveler, are about to learn how an entire city tried to outsource its filth problem to something with a curly tail and questionable hygiene standards. Now you probably won't survive this. Not because of plague or violent revolution, though spoiler those are coming, but because you're going to step in something, inhale deeply, and emotionally implode. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and what time you're watching. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through the Rue de la Mortellerie, dodging laundry drips and random puddles of origin unknown. The buildings lean in, as if conspiring. A cart clatters past, piled high with rotting straw and yesterday's dinner bones. No one looks twice. Mainstream historical fact. In the 1700s, Paris was one of the largest cities in Europe, but one of the least equipped for urban hygiene. The streets were narrow, the gutters shallow, and the people numerous. It wasn't so much a trash problem as a trash lifestyle. You pass a baker's boy tossing a lump of moldy dough into the alley. Two dogs and a rat immediately begin negotiations over who gets it. Someone above dumps out a basin, hopefully just dishwater. Quirky observation. The phrase, "mind your step," may as well have originated here. It was common for Parisians to walk with sticks, not just for fashion, but to test what was solid and what was, let's say, transitional. You duck under a sagging awning and catch your first whiff of something truly unique: pig. Yes, pig. Not cooked. Just present. Snuffling, rooting, trotting past like it owns the street. And in many ways it does. Historians still argue whether pigs were officially sanctioned or merely tolerated in Parisian streets. Some say they were part of an informal cleanup crew. Others argue it was sheer municipal laziness. What's certain? There were a lot of pigs, and they were busy. This one stops in front of a doorway, sniffs a cabbage leaf, and starts chewing with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for aristocrats at banquets. A little girl skips past it without blinking. This is normal. You follow a particularly plucky sow down a side lane where refuse is piled high. Fish bones, onion skins, broken crockery, the occasional shoe. The pig dives in like a gourmand at an open buffet. Behind you, a man in a wine-stained waistcoat grumbles. "That's Madame Laurette's pig," he mutters. "She feeds it better than her husband." You nod solemnly. The pig glances back at you, a single olive pit stuck to its snout. It does not care for your judgment. This, my friend, is Paris. Beautiful, brilliant, and absolutely buried in filth. But help strangely squealingly is already on the way. You trudge deeper into the labyrinth of 18th century Paris, your sandals, or are they clogs now sticking slightly with every step? You're learning the local choreography. Avoid the gutters, sidestep the rats, salute the pigs. Occasionally you hold your breath when passing a suspicious mound that may or may not have once been bread. You've started noticing things. Not noble things, not poetic things. Things like how the muck has a texture, how some smells seem to layer like a symphony of rot, how the streets aren't lined with gold but with the ghost of someone's lunch. It's hard to imagine now, but this city will one day be celebrated for its elegance, its order, its gleaming boulevards, but not yet. Right now, Paris is a little like a teenager full of promise, deeply confused about hygiene, and stubbornly committed to bad habits. You pass a row of houses, each dumping its trash outside the front door. Not in bins, there are no bins, just piles, bones, ash, apple cores, rags. You see a wig just lying there, a whole wig, possibly judging you. Mainstream historical fact. There was no formal public waste removal in Paris until the 19th century. For centuries, it was common practice for households to simply throw their trash into the street, or if they were feeling fancy, into the open sewer channels that ran along either side of the road. A wheelbarrow squeaks past you piled high with manure and empty wine bottles. The man pushing it tips his hat. The smell hits you like betrayal. You're beginning to understand something. This city didn't just fail at garbage management, it opted out of even trying. Quirky detail. In some neighborhoods, it was considered courteous to call out Garda's low, watch out for the water, before tossing a chamber pot's contents out the window. The phrase eventually morphed into loo, as in bathroom. Congratulations, you now know the linguistic history of public urination. You pass a tavern where a group of men argue loudly about Voltaire while casually tossing bones out the window. A dog with a limp licks at the marrow. The ground squelches beneath your heel. You try not to think about it. Historians still argue whether the filth of Paris was truly as bad as the memoirs and satire made it seem. Some accounts describe it as hellish, others claim it had a certain rustic charm. One traveler wrote, "It smells of onions, ambition, and unwashed feet." That's probably the most generous take. But something else is starting to click. This system, if you can call it that, isn't random. There's a rhythm to it. An economy. Trash is tossed, then picked through. By people, by dogs, by birds, and most consistently by pigs. Lots of them. Small pigs, large pigs, elegant pigs with bows, dirty pigs with attitudes, pigs with names, pigs with jobs. And soon you'll see exactly how important those pigs really are. But first, you need to not faint from the smell. Take a deep breath. Just not here. You turn a corner carefully, because corners in this city tend to surprise you. And suddenly, you're face to snout with 3 pigs trotting in formation like they own the block. And frankly, they do. One snorts and sidesteps you with clear disdain. The others barely acknowledge your presence. They're on a mission. Somewhere ahead, someone's tossed out the remains of last night's bouillabaisse, and the scent trail is calling like an opera in pork speak. You follow, of course, because you're starting to understand that these pigs aren't just part of the background, they're part of the system. They dart between the legs of a fishmonger and his apprentice whose apron is more scale than cloth. Neither blinks. This is normal. This is Paris. The pigs arrive at their buffet, a heap of refuse that includes orange peels, bread crusts, shredded paper, and a single abandoned boot with suspicious chew marks. They dive in with gusto, hooves clicking, snouts rooting, curly tails twitching with joy. Mainstream historical fact. In the 18th century, pigs roamed freely in many parts of Paris, particularly in poorer neighborhoods where formal waste collection didn't exist. The pigs were owned, sort of. Families kept them not as pets, but as portable waste disposal units. You fed them scraps, they cleaned the streets, and eventually became dinner. You watch one pig tug a cabbage stalk loose and drag it under a cart like it's protecting a rare prize. Another one gnaws on a melon rind with a reverence that borders on spiritual. Quirky observation. Some pigs were so beloved, useful, that they had names and routines. There are recorded accounts of pigs being taught to return home at dusk. One document mentions Jean-Luc, a pig of admirable punctuality. You spot a boy tossing crusts to a pig wearing what looks like a velvet ribbon. The pig ignores him, too busy with a pile of radish greens. Nearby, a woman leans out of her second-story window. Didi, she calls. One pig lifts its head. Don't eat the soap again. It grunts in acknowledgement, then does exactly as it pleases. This isn't chaos. Not exactly. It's closer to collaboration. Historians still argue whether this pig-based waste system was an act of desperation or genius. Some praise its efficiency. Others shudder at the hygiene implications. One Parisian doctor called the pigs four-legged filters of our sins. That's either poetic or deeply unhelpful. You pass a group of piglets chasing a moth near a butcher's stall. The butcher shoos them half-heartedly with a cleaver, then tosses them a liver. For later, he mutters. The pigs resume their parade, and you, curious now, follow them out of the market district and into one of the cramped residential alleys where life clings to the walls like moss. Here the pigs pause, not for food but for conversation. Yes, really. A neighbor leans over a railing, speaking softly to a massive sow like she's an old friend. You remember last week's carrots, she says. I have more. Better ones. The pig stares, unimpressed. Still, it follows her inside. You blink. You've just witnessed what might be the closest thing Paris has to curbside pickup. Pigs weren't just cleaners. They were part of the daily rhythm. and their presence made the filth bearable, or at least temporarily movable. But what happens when the pigs move on? Or worse, get in the way? That's coming. For now, though, the streets have never looked so well not clean, but perhaps slightly less doomed. You wake the next morning to the sound of grunting. Not your own, thankfully. Outside the small inn where you found a corner to rest, the pigs are already up and working. Well-rooting scrounging, occasionally chasing a pigeon with dramatic flair. It's an early shift and they seem very committed to their profession. The street smells like it always does. A cocktail of damp bread, overripe pears, boot leather, and something unidentifiable that's either soap or rotting turnips. You've stopped trying to tell. As you step outside, you sidestep a pig napping on the doorstep, its belly rising and falling like a soft pink hill. You nod respectfully. It does not respond. Across the alley, a family empties their food scraps into a shallow trough just outside their front door. A large black pig appears from seemingly nowhere, noses the pile, then digs in like it's dining at Versailles. Mainstream historical fact. For families without money to pay for waste removal, or in neighborhoods where no such service existed, pigs were a low-cost solution. Feed them your refuse, and they clean up what the city won't. Some historians even argue this was one of the earliest forms of informal sanitation economy. You turn a corner and nearly trip over a cluster of piglets wrestling over a carrot stub. A nearby vendor shoos them off with a broom, but gently, like he's dealing with small, overly confident children. And in a way he is, because here pigs aren't intruders. They're colleagues. It wasn't uncommon for residents to treat their neighborhood pigs with a mix of affection and exasperation. Like that one uncle who always shows up uninvited but brings good cheese. Quirky note. There are reports of pigs being painted with colored marks to denote which household they belong to. One source claims Madame Fournier's pigs all wore blue ribbons. Another says a pig once wandered into a salon and was mistaken for a guest until it started chewing on the table leg. You pass by a carpenter's shop where two pigs are inspecting the sawdust pile. One seems deeply moved. The carpenter mutters they know good oak when they see it. And in the background, the same questions rise again. How much of this is working? Is it efficient, or is it simply the absence of anything better? Historians still argue whether Paris's reliance on pigs delayed the development of proper sanitation infrastructure. After all, when you've got a living snorting solution, why build a waste removal system? But as you walk through the twisting streets where garbage disappears just as quickly as it appears, you start to wonder if maybe these pigs knew something we didn't. Not consciously, of course. They're pigs, but maybe that's what makes it work. They ask for nothing. They show up. They eat the mess. And in a city that's always full, always loud, and always teetering on the edge of collapse that might be the most reliable service available, you sit down on a doorstep. A pig ambles by and plops beside you, grunting softly like a co-worker at the end of a long shift. You both watch the street clean itself slowly, clumsily, but undeniably. And you think just maybe Paris hasn't forgotten how to clean up. It just outsourced it to pigs. The afternoon sun settles over Paris like a slightly sweaty blanket, and you find yourself wandering toward the edge of the Faubourg Saint-Marcel, one of the poorer districts just outside the city center. Here, the air is less perfumed, more pungent. Less bread and wine, more cabbage and socks. And it's here that you meet the real heroes of this story, the household pigs. Not the stylish market-strolling pigs from earlier. These are the behind-the-scenes pigs, the suburban workforce, the four-legged trash bins tucked behind creaky shutters and half-sunken doors. You peer into a courtyard where a family of 6 is eating lunch beside a very large pig. It grunts every few moments, just loud enough to express that it too has opinions about boiled onions. The mother tosses scraps into a wooden trough. The pig, a dignified creature with a slightly crooked tail and the energy of a retired general, sniffs, approves, and begins eating. Mainstream historical fact. Many urban families in 18th-century Paris kept pigs in their homes or in tiny attached courtyards. These pigs were rarely pets. They were waste processors, sometimes income sources, and always part of the household rhythm. In another alley, you pass a small building with smoke curling from the chimney. Outside, 2 pigs nap in a pile of onion skins and potato peels. A boy walks past balancing a bucket of slop and casually pats one pig on the rump. "Excuse me, madame." The pig grunts without waking. Quirky detail. Some pigs were trained, or at least strongly encouraged, to go on short neighborhood routes collecting food waste along the way. One document refers to a pig named Capitaine, who visited 3 households each day in order before returning home to nap beside the fire. You turn a corner and find a pig sleeping in what appears to be a baby cradle half buried in hay. A pair of wooden shoes sits beside it. No one seems alarmed. Inside one home, you glimpse a pig rooting around under the kitchen table, searching for crumbs. An older woman taps her cane once and says, "Leave the bread, Henry. You had your turn." Historians still argue whether this level of pig-human coexistence was charming, practical, or completely unsanitary, likely all three. But to the families who relied on them, these pigs weren't just trash eaters, they were assets. You pause in front of a tannery where the stench is unbearable even by local standards. 2 pigs loiter outside, munching on discarded trimmings like they're attending a buffet no one else wants to admit exists. They're not fenced in, they're not tied, but they're not lost either. They know where they belong. And when they've cleaned up the scraps, they'll find their way back. Snouts twitching tails, lazy, full of purpose and peelings. You sit by a well watching the low sun stretch across the rooftops. Another pig shuffles past with a strip of cabbage dangling from its mouth like a green mustache. Somewhere down the street, a man yells, "Suzette, get out of the laundry." And a pig, possibly Suzette, runs squealing out of view, triumphant. You sigh. You've stopped being surprised. In fact, you're starting to feel like the pigs have it figured out. Eat the mess. Ignore the noise. Find your way home. Rinse. Repeat. Evening arrives, not with a dramatic sunset or choral swell, but with the slow dimming of the sky and the rise of smells that somehow deepen after dark. The day's heat lifts and the streets take on a new mood, less frantic, more resigned. It's like Paris collectively exhales and says, well, that was another day of absolute chaos. Shall we do it again tomorrow? You walk down Rue Mouffetard cobblestone, slick from someone washing down their doorstep or possibly dumping out a pot of despair. A light fog creeps in, curling between buildings like a curious cat. And from the alleys, the pigs emerge again. The night shift has begun. These pigs don't snuffle idly. They're faster, hungrier, less polite. One of them is already halfway through a tomato that may have once been part of someone's soup. Mainstream historical fact. The pig-based cleanup system in Paris functioned most efficiently at night. By day, humans tossed their waste. By night, pigs redistributed and consumed it. This informal cycle formed the city's unspoken trash rhythm. You follow one pig through a courtyard where someone is playing a flute badly. The pig pauses, listens, and then trots off unimpressed. On the corner, a small group of children toss stale biscuits toward a particularly round sow who catches one midair. They cheer. Someone throws another. A dog joins in. No one wins. Quirky observation. Parisian pigs weren't always docile. Records show that pigs sometimes chased children, fought over bones with stray dogs, and once reportedly broke into a pastry shop and devoured an entire tray of almond tarts before being lured out with carrots and threats. You pass a tavern with its door wide open. Inside, the smell of meat and the sound of bad arguments waft through the air. 2 pigs sit outside like bouncers guarding a pile of discarded bread heels. They grunt at you in unison. You nod and keep walking. Historians still argue whether pigs genuinely reduced disease by removing organic waste or simply masked the problem temporarily. Some suggest that by spreading trash as they rooted through it, they may have made things worse. But no one denies the streets looked cleaner, at least until morning. You find yourself back near the Seine. A boat passes by its lanterns, flickering like fireflies. The reflection on the water is beautiful. You look down and see a pig staring into the river alongside you, contemplating life maybe, or just deciding whether to jump in after a floating cabbage leaf. It snorts and walks away. You linger. Because in this moment under the stars and amid the low symphony of rustling hooves and creaking shutters, Paris feels peaceful. Gross, yes, but peaceful. The pigs continue their route like janitors who don't clock in, don't get paid, and don't care about your opinion. They clean what they can. They leave what they can't. And somehow the city holds together. You sit on a step. A pig brushes past. And for a moment, neither of you has anywhere better to be. Morning in Paris is not gentle. It arrives with a clang of church bells, a slam of shutters, and the unmistakable sound of someone yelling at a pig to get out of the laundry. Again, you wake with your back against a warm stone wall and a pig snoring 2 feet away, nestled in a pile of lettuce leaves and a discarded wig. You're no longer surprised. Honestly, you might be a little envious of its sleep quality. As you stretch and stand, the city shakes itself awake. Market stalls are rolled into place. Bread ovens hiss open. Chickens scream for reasons only they understand. And through it all, the pigs resume their slow patrol, snorting, rooting, occasionally pausing to judge you for stepping into something you really should have avoided. You follow one particularly portly pig down a main boulevard. It stops every few feet, sniffing at heaps of waste tossed out during the night. A fish head, a mushy apple, something orange and regrettable. It eats with enthusiasm that borders on pride. Mainstream historical fact. Despite their obvious usefulness, pigs in Paris were often caught in bureaucratic limbo. They were never officially part of a waste management program, yet removing them would have left poorer districts buried in refuse. They were tolerated, but barely. This pig waddles past a group of merchants setting up shop. One of them tosses a ham rind its way, then mutters, "He eats better than I do." The pig ignores the sarcasm and gets to work. Further down the street, you hear two women arguing loudly about whose pig broke a barrel of wine the night before. One blames the other's fat pink menace. The accused insists her pig was home eating parsnips. Quirky detail. There are documented cases of pigs being used in disputes as legal witnesses. Not literally, of course, but one man once insisted the behavior of a neighbor's pig proved his own innocence in a theft. The court disagreed. You stop near a fountain where a group of pigs are gathered like aristocrats at a salon. One sits in the shade, swishing its tail like it's contemplating philosophy. Another nudges a peach pit around like a toy. It's oddly meditative, and then you hear it. A crash, a squeal, a very loud baker shouting something involving the phrase, "pastry massacre." You round the corner and see the aftermath, a dozen croissants flattened, a small child laughing, and a pig looking extremely satisfied with itself. Someone sighs. Again, historians still argue whether these pigs caused more trouble than they were worth. One school of thought praises their ecological efficiency. Another points to frequent property damage, unpredictable behavior, and occasional pig-led stampedes. But regardless of the academic take, the day-to-day reality is simple pigs were there, present, constant, not as symbols or metaphors, but as workers, filthy determined and unapologetic. You sit on a low wall as the city moves around you. People pass, carts roll, someone curses at a goat. A boy walks by holding a piglet like it's a loaf of bread. And your pig, yes, yours, now returns to your side, snorting once before curling into a half circle at your feet. You realize something. In this era, in this city, amidst this mess, the pig might just be the only thing keeping it all together. By midday, the sun is high and the smells are evolving. You walk through a neighborhood where the streets narrow and the houses lean in like gossiping grandmothers. It's warmer here, closer, and somehow louder. Even the pigs sound conversational. One of them trots by with a cabbage leaf hanging from its mouth like a cigar. A man tips his hat to it. You assume this is either a sign of respect or a very low bar for daily interactions. You stop outside a home where something incredible is happening. A pig is going upstairs. Yes, upstairs. You blink, check again. No mistake. The pig ascends a narrow wooden staircase like it does this every day. And it might. Mainstream historical fact. In many of Paris's denser districts, families kept pigs not only in courtyards or alleys, but inside their homes. There are first-hand accounts of pigs sharing living space, climbing stairs, and even sleeping under kitchen tables. It wasn't considered bizarre, it was practical. You step inside the doorway just enough to glimpse the pig sniffing around a room filled with cooking pots, linens, and what might be someone's uncle passed out on a cot. No one screams. No one reacts. This is normal. The woman of the house waves at you with a ladle. He's family, she says, meaning the pig. Quirky observation. Pigs living indoors led to some unexpected domestic negotiations. One 18th-century diary complains that the family pig kept eating the laundry soap and then vomiting it up on the shoes. The next entry describes the pig sleeping peacefully in the bread bin. You walk deeper into the block and discover an informal pig pen, if one can call 4 fence posts and a broken bucket a pen. 3 pigs nap in the shade, occasionally shifting like furry bean bags. A child pokes one with a broom handle. Papa says they're more dependable than taxes, she says proudly. She's not wrong. The pigs don't complain. They don't unionize. They don't require payment, just scraps. You sit beside a shop where a man is carving wood. He gestures toward a pig curled near his bench. She's my apprentice, he says. Tells me which scraps to keep. The pig twitches its ear, probably wise. Historians still argue whether this cohabitation was necessity or cultural acceptance. Some say pigs indoors were a symptom of poverty. Others claim it was simply a way of life until someone invented the idea of boundaries. But for now, you're witnessing the full integration of pig in person. Not pet, not livestock. Partner. You pass a room where 2 pigs and a cat appear to be sharing a rug. The pigs snore. The cat looks annoyed. You don't stay long. Outside again, you pause at the sound of singing. A woman stands in her doorway humming as she peels potatoes into a trough. A pig waits patiently below. You don't rush a lady, she says to it, even for peels. The pig grunts like it agrees, and then of course eats everything the second it hits the wood. You smile, because here in the cramped, chaotic middle of Paris, it all somehow works. A loaf of bread, a song, a squeal, and just enough room for everyone if they don't mind sharing the staircase. You're crossing the Pont Saint-Michel now, the river glinting below like melted pewter. The air is cooler by the water, but it does little to erase the smell rising from the banks, where garbage collects like driftwood and pigs gather like gossip. Yes, even here, especially here, a pair of them wade ankle-deep into the shallows, sniffing at discarded turnip greens tangled with old rags. One of them sneezes, then returns to its rummaging with the zeal of someone who just found a lost sock under the bed and decided it's a treasure. A barge drifts by its deck loaded with barrels and boxes. From the far end, a pig peeks over the edge. Apparently, some are now taking to river travel. Mainstream historical fact. Though pigs were primarily street-level residents, it wasn't uncommon to find them on boats transporting waste or food along the Seine. Their presence on water was seen as useful, if not exactly charming. You step off the bridge into one of Paris's busier avenues, where market carts squeeze between drooping buildings and shouts echo from every direction. And amidst the noise, the pigs move like seasoned commuters. One snorts its way through a crowd, dodging a priest, a fishwife, and a man selling questionable pears. It stops in front of a butcher's stall and begins to browse. Yes, browse. The butcher sighs and tosses it a chunk of gristle. Cheaper than a broom, he mutters. Quirky note. Many shopkeepers treated pigs as part of the cost of doing business. Some left out designated scraps just to avoid damage. Others got creative. One baker reportedly built a tiny ramp so pigs could retrieve day-old loaves without knocking over the basket. You pause in front of a bakery window, where 3 pigs are peering in, mesmerized by the display. Behind the glass, fruit tarts, meat pies, and one large ham that feels like a warning. One pig presses its snout to the window. It does not blink. You move on. The clatter of wheels behind you forces a quick sidestep as a cart barrels past, narrowly missing a pig and knocking over a bucket of fish heads. The pig, unfazed, takes this as a divine sign and begins to feast. You duck into a side street where the shadows grow longer and the chaos softens into the hum of late afternoon. Here the pigs linger more lazily. They roll in dust, sunbathe against the wall, and scratch themselves on whatever architecture is available. One scratches its back on a statue of Saint Denis. Even the saints, it seems, aren't immune. Historians still argue whether pigs ever posed a serious threat to traffic or trade. Some documents describe them as clever navigators. Others accuse them of causing everything from cart crashes to runaway horses. The truth? Probably both. Because while Paris moved around them, the pigs moved through it, insistent, hungry, and blessedly unaware of urban planning. You sit at a crossroads where 3 pigs converge like philosophers in debate. One carries half a leek, another holds what might once have been an apple tart. The third arrives with nothing, snorts and leaves again, possibly offended. And as the bells toll the hour and the light fades into that soft Parisian gray, you realize something. In this city of revolution and poets, palaces, and sewers, sometimes the only creatures who really know what they're doing are the pigs. You wander into a square tucked behind a row of aging tenements where the cobblestones are uneven, and the stories are even stranger. laundry flaps like battle flags overhead, and somewhere nearby a violin saws through a melancholy tune that doesn't quite match the smell of stewed cabbage drifting through the air. At the center of the square, a pig is perched on an overturned bucket like it's about to deliver a speech. A small crowd has gathered, though not around the pig exactly. More around the mess it's about to dive into. You've stumbled into a very particular Parisian phenomenon, pigs and public spectacle. Two women argue over who's responsible for the pile of waste the pig is currently inspecting. "That fish spine came from your kitchen," says the taller one. "I only cook poultry on Fridays," the other replies, arms crossed. The pig, undeterred by civic dispute, begins to eat. Mainstream historical fact. By the late 1700s, pigs were so commonplace and so free to roam that they started to appear in satirical pamphlets, public jokes, and crude political cartoons. Writers used pigs as stand-ins for politicians, philosophers, and even the French public. A pig could be both punchline and metaphor. You walk past a wall scrawled with graffiti. Someone has drawn a pig in a powdered wig holding a gavel. Underneath it, Le Juge du Fumier, the judge of garbage. It's honestly not far off. The pig finishes the pile, gives a single satisfied grunt, and waddles away. The crowd breaks apart like nothing happened. You continue on and pass a cafe where a trio of men debate Rousseau. One pauses mid-argument to toss a chicken bone to a pig rooting near their table. "See," he says, "that's a true social contract." Quirky moment. Some cafe owners reportedly gave pigs names and joked about them being regulars. One famous cafe near Montmartre supposedly had a pig named Voltaire, who was more civil than half the clientele. You turn down a narrow alley where several pigs are lying on their sides, full-bellied and snoring. Someone's draped a lace curtain over one of them. Another wears a tricorn hat, askew but dignified. Whether this is mockery or affection is unclear. Historians still argue whether Parisians viewed pigs with affection, irritation, or resigned amusement. Judging from the art, the jokes, and the increasing amount of pig-themed street theater, the answer may be all three. You reach a tiny bookshop with a chalkboard sign outside. Today's quote, "We are all pigs in the end, just hoping to die clean." You're not sure if it's a metaphor, a complaint, or a weather prediction. Inside the shop, you spot a pamphlet titled Les Cochons et la République. You flip through it. One satirical sketch shows a pig running for mayor. Another shows one lecturing in a powdered wig. The final panel is just a pig standing triumphantly over a pile of human garbage with the caption "Efficiency in Action." You buy it for 1 franc. Outside, a boy runs past, shouting, "The pig stole my tart again." You don't ask questions. By now you understand. In this city, the pigs aren't side characters. They're main characters in a drama that no playwright ever wrote, but everyone keeps acting out anyway. And as twilight seeps into the sky, and the bells begin their long, slow toll, you realize, some cities build statues of their heroes. Paris just lets them clean up lunch. It's nighttime again, and the streets hum with a kind of weary, low-bellied exhale. The shops have closed. The gossip has quieted. The smell hasn't improved. But the pigs are thriving. You stroll past a baker's stall, shuttered tight, though a few hopeful snouts still sniff at the crack beneath the door. A sow with a confident waddle scours the gutter beside you, kicking up crusts and paper like she's flipping through old news. And around the corner, chaos. A small cluster of men shout in front of a low tavern, not at each other, but at a pig. A very large, very guilty-looking pig. The reason is immediately clear. The remains of a wheel of cheese half-eaten trails from the pig's mouth like a flag of war. Its hooves are slick with something pungent and yellow. The tavern keeper gestures wildly, apron-stained with accusation. "That's the 3rd time this week," he bellows. "He waits until we turn our backs." The pig stares, then burps. Mainstream historical fact pigs caused enough urban disruption in 18th-century Paris that complaints began mounting not just about filth, but about property damage and safety concerns. Some pigs knocked over stalls, others bit delivery boys. At least one is recorded to have entered a nobleman's parlor and relieved itself on a priceless rug. In response, city officials began whispering the unthinkable regulation. You follow the scene as it shifts from outrage to negotiation. A neighbor defends the pig. He only takes what's unattended. Another adds, "It's not theft, it's redistribution." Quirky footnote. One pig was reportedly brought before a magistrate in 1782 after destroying a baker's cart. The pig was not punished. The baker was fined for leaving baked goods unguarded and temptingly near the street. You walk on deeper into the administrative quarter. Here things are different. Stone buildings loom taller. Lamps glow steadier. The pigs are fewer but not absent. You spot one in a doorway waiting quietly as a watchman scratches its ears between yawns. Inside one of these offices, quills scratch parchment. Minutes are being taken. Proposals drafted. There's talk of hygiene, of civic dignity, of something called a municipal waste solution. The word pig appears 6 times in a single paragraph, always underlined. Historians still argue whether the push to regulate pigs was driven by genuine health concerns or upper-class aesthetic snobbery. The poor saw pigs as useful. The rich saw them as embarrassing. Eventually, the complaints grew too loud to ignore. In one chamber, a clerk reads a loud proposal to restrict the movement of livestock within the urban core. In the next petition, to allow Madame Leroux's pig clod to remain at large on account of his good behavior. You lean against a lamppost and watch it unfold. The city is split. On one side, dignity, order, and modernity. On the other, bacon with benefits. The compromise. Laws. Unenforceable ones. Pigs must now wear identifying tags. They must not enter public buildings. They may not be out after dark. You turn and see 3 pigs trotting by wearing ribbons around their necks like rebellious debutantes. One pauses, looks at you, and squeals just once. A challenge? Or maybe a laugh. You follow them back toward the square, because rules are fine. But Paris belongs to the pigs, and the pigs know it. The next morning, Paris pretends to be respectable. The streets are freshly swept, well less unswept. Market vendors arrange their produce in tidy pyramids. A clergyman walks with purpose robe, swishing eyes ahead. And a city guard passes you. Without a nod, his boots clean, his expression determined not to smell anything. But the pigs, they're already several steps ahead. You spot one trotting past with a carrot in its mouth like a cigar. Another roots beneath a cabbage stall and emerges wearing a lettuce leaf like a hat. 2 others race down the street, dodging between carts, laughing well, grunting like it's all a game. Which to them it is, because new laws are not pigs in Paris still roam. Just less openly. Now there's a layer of performance, a nod to the rules, a dance between defiance and discretion. Mainstream historical fact. In the late 1700s, as regulations were introduced to curb pig-related nuisances, some Parisians found creative workarounds. Pigs were disguised as pets walked only at dawn or moved indoors during inspections. In some neighborhoods, underground pig routes were rumored to exist alleys and courtyards where enforcement didn't bother checking. You turn onto Rue du Cochon Gras, yes, a real street, and yes, it means Fat Pig Street. A man leans in his doorway, smoking a pipe, watching as a pig sidles past, wearing what appears to be a bell. Identification, he says, nodding. That's Claude. Never causes trouble. Claude, ever the professional, ignores both of you and continues toward a small pile of beets. Quirky aside, some pigs became neighborhood celebrities. Local kids would name them, track their movements, even feed them treats. One well-documented pig, known as Marie Legrise, was reportedly so beloved that when she was nearly confiscated by officials, the entire block petitioned to have her declared resident property. You reach a square where a market is just opening. Everything looks staged, curated, proper, until you notice the stall closest to the fountain. No vendor, just a pig curled beneath the table tail, twitching eyes half shut. A woman walks by and slips it a roll. Your breakfast, monsieur. It grunts without moving. You walk past the Hotel de Ville where posters still cling to the wall. Pigs must be tagged. Someone scribbled over it if they let you. Historians still argue whether these rules had any lasting effect. Some say they marked the beginning of Parisian sanitation. Others say they were ignored, mocked, and quietly dissolved by collective non-compliance. You pass a pig in a small coat. You don't question it. You pass another wearing boots badly. Still don't question it. You reach a narrow bridge where a pair of pigs sunbathe like tourists. A boy stands nearby holding a basket of carrot tops and softly reciting poetry to them. They're smarter than the politicians, he says, without looking up. At least pigs know what to do with garbage. You pause. Consider disagreeing. Don't. Because here pigs aren't just animals. They're commentary. They're infrastructure. They're citizens. And as long as there's trash in the streets, and there always is, there will be pigs to greet it. The city may dress itself in order and law, but underneath, it still squeals. The rain comes without warning. Not a storm, not a drama, just a fine, steady drizzle that seems to fall from nowhere and everywhere at once. You pull your cloak tighter, the dampness seeping in with the quiet patience of a Parisian argument. Cobblestones glisten, roof tiles weep, and the pigs adjust without fuss. They've seen worse. You step over a puddle that might have once been soup or something far less charming. A pig is already there, snout deep delighted. Welcome to wet Paris. Mainstream historical fact. Rain didn't cleanse 18th century Paris. It simply redistributed the filth. With open sewers, shallow gutters, and no street-level drainage water carried waste wherever it liked. In low-lying neighborhoods, flooding was common, and when flooding occurred, pigs were often the first line of response, unintentionally. You watch one such pig float briefly on a wooden plank before hopping off and wading toward a pile of soggy refuse. A woman tosses him a heel of bread with a nod. Best worker in the quarter, she says, adjusting her shawl. You find yourself in a sloped alley now where the rainwater flows like a gentle stream, brown fragrant and filled with floating leaves, peels, and mystery. A pig trots ahead, ears perked, tail wagging like it's in a parade. Quirky detail? Some pigs were known to anticipate rain. Locals said they'd change their routes, sleep under stairwells, or curl up in laundry baskets just before a storm. One popular folktale told of a pig that correctly predicted weather better than the town crier for 3 months straight. You pass a porch where 3 pigs sit quietly under a thatched overhang watching the world dissolve in mist. One licks rain from a wooden spoon left behind. You step beneath a balcony where the landlord has placed a slanted board, a crude awning, and beneath it, a pig is curled dry and smug, guarding a cabbage like it's gold. Historians still argue whether pigs during this period acted as environmental indicators. Their behavior, what they ate, where they congregated, could tell locals more about the state of the neighborhood than any bulletin or preacher. If the pigs left people paid attention, you walk past a flooded courtyard where a boy in clogs is using a pig as a windbreak. He holds a basket above his head with one hand and pets the pig with the other. This one's smart, he says. Only eats what used to be food. The pig grunts proudly. At the corner, a collapsed stall spills onions into the water. 2 pigs rush in to investigate, slipping, sliding, grinning in the way only pigs can. It's a mess, but it's manageable, because mess is the default here, and pigs are the constant. Even the rain respects them. You climb a short flight of stone steps and look out over the street, water pooling in the low spots, people hopping over puddles, carts spraying mist into the air. And through it all, the pigs move with practiced ease. Not frantic, not confused, just present. You breathe in. Rot. Rain. Hey, life. You sigh. The pig beside you sighs too. You stay like that for a while, 2 damp souls in a city that keeps pretending to be clean. Afternoon fades into that in-between light where everything feels suspended. Colors dull, sounds soften, even the pigs seem to move slower, more contemplative. You've wandered into a quieter district now where the buildings are older, the alleys narrower, and the sense of time slipping feels stronger. And then you see it. A pig in chains. Not dramatic ones. Just a simple iron collar around its neck tethered to a post like a dog. It snorts softly as you pass eyes half-lidded, chewing on something that was probably once cabbage. A man nearby notices you looking. She's on trial, he says like it's nothing unusual. You blink. I'm sorry, the pig is what? Being held, he explains, for criminal mischief. Ate an entire bouquet meant for a funeral. Judge will see her tomorrow. Mainstream historical fact. In early modern France, pigs were occasionally brought to trial. Seriously. Accused of everything from crop theft to property destruction, and in a few rare cases, even injury to humans. These cases were not metaphorical. They were logged herd and sometimes included formal punishments. You sit beside the man as he sharpens a knife slowly. It's not her first offense, he adds. But she's popular. Whole neighborhoods signing a petition. You look at the pig. It looks back unimpressed. Quirky note 1. Infamous pig trial from 1386, okay, a few centuries earlier, but it stuck. Ended with the pig being dressed in a waistcoat and trousers before execution to emphasize its anthropomorphized guilt. Paris's cases were rarely that dramatic, but still, the legal bureaucracy had a hard time ignoring animals that acted so human, or perhaps humans acting so piggish. You walk away slowly, the image of the tethered pig sticking in your mind like a smudge. Down the street, another pig scratches its side against the corner of a marble statue. An angel chipped at the wing. You wonder if that pig ever stood trial or simply knew better than to get caught. Historians still argue whether these trials were symbolic acts of social order or just symptoms of legal systems desperate to seem in control. Either way, the pigs rarely lost sleep over them. People did. You enter a square where a town crier reads aloud the news. Behind him, 3 pigs fight over a watermelon rind. He doesn't pause. And a meeting has been scheduled to address the increasing porcine population in District 12. The pigs continue to squeal, where several residents have claimed their laundry was stolen by a known pig named Bastion. You raise an eyebrow. Someone in the crowd mutters, "It's true. Bastion's got a thing for lace." You walk on past a narrow stairwell where a pig sleeps curled in a flower pot and up toward the edge of the cemetery. Here, even the dead have stories. A caretaker with muddy boots leans on a rake. "Used to be pigs buried here too," he says. "With honors. Cleaned the streets so well we figured they earned it." You're not sure if he's joking. You're not sure it matters. Because somewhere between parody and poetry, the pigs became part of the story. Not nuisance. Not background, but participants. Paris didn't just live around them. It lived with them. Even when they stood accused. Even when they stood alone. And as dusk curls its fingers around the rooftops, you look back once more at the tethered pig. It's watching the horizon, or maybe just planning its escape. The last light of day filters through the smoke and soot of the chimneys, turning the sky the color of faded wine. The city softens. A rare hush settles over the alleys. Even the pigs begin to slow, less urgent, more contemplative, like they too are pondering the arc of existence. You wander toward the edge of town now, where cobblestone gives way to beaten dirt, and the clutter of human life thins just enough to see the sky again. In this quiet, you spot a lone pig lying under a fig tree, chewing slowly, eyes half closed. It doesn't move as you approach, just breathes. You sit down beside it, no one else around, just you, a pig in a city exhaling after centuries of holding its nose. Mainstream historical fact. By the turn of the 19th century, Paris began phasing out pigs from its streets. Not all at once, not cleanly, but with enough pressure from health officials, urban reformers, and the increasingly bourgeois tastes of city planners, the pigs began to disappear. You watch as 2 boys chase after a pig in the distance, laughing, unaware that their playmate may be among the last of its kind to roam free in this quarter. One boy trips and falls into a puddle of ash and peelings. The pig returns, sniffs him, and begins to lick the grime from his hand. The boy giggles. Quirky reflection. People didn't necessarily want to get rid of the pigs. They just wanted the mess gone. But when your cleanup crew is the mess, the decision becomes complicated. Some families hid their pigs. Others relocated them to nearby farms. Some wept when they were confiscated. Others shrugged. But everyone noticed when the streets started smelling worse before they smelled better. Historians still argue whether the pigs were ever truly the problem. One paper written decades later proposed a strange theory that the pigs had acted not just as garbage collectors, but as social glue creatures who bridged the gaps between rich and poor, official and informal, disorder and efficiency. And now the bridges are breaking. Paris will get its sewer system, its boulevards, its uniform sanitation crews, but it will lose something too. Something that grunted in alleys and kept the rot at bay. You stand. The pig beside you opens one eye, watches you, then turns its head away again. Dismissed. You smile, because you've seen it now from the gutters to the courts, from comedy to confrontation. Pigs weren't just a footnote in Paris's history. They were a full sentence. You walk back toward the city where the lamps flicker on one by one. And behind you, the pig rolls over with a grunt, kicking up a cloud of dust as the first star blinks into the sky. You walk through a neighborhood that feels older than memory, where vines curl through cracked stone, and every wall has a secret it's trying not to tell. It's here among the ghost streets of outer Paris that you start to notice what's missing. The pigs, where once they were constant snorting, wandering, interrupting arguments and cleanup alike. Now there are gaps. Fewer grunts, fewer tales. Fewer cheerful interlopers dragging half-eaten pears across the cobblestones. Something's changed. Mainstream historical fact. In the early 1800s, as Paris underwent the first waves of modernization, local ordinances began enforcing strict bans on free-roaming livestock within city limits. Pigs, long tolerated and half adored, were now officially unwelcome. Street by street, district by district, they were removed, confiscated, sold, or slaughtered. You pass a shuttered stall with a chalk message scrawled across the wood. No pigs, no peace. A little dramatic, but not entirely wrong. Quirky moment. The last known pig roundup in central Paris in the 1820s turned into a minor protest. Residents lined the streets as city officials escorted pigs out in carts. Some threw turnips in protest. Others just wept. One pig reportedly broke free and ran straight into a wine cellar, refusing to come out until lured with garlic sausage. You stopped near a fountain once beloved by the pigs, where leftovers were often tossed, and pigs would wade in with glee. Now it's dry, cleaned, decorated with a wrought iron fence. A plaque reads, restored in 1834. No mention of the pigs who used to bathe in its basin. You lean on the iron gate and glance down the alley. No hoofprints in the dust. Just silence. Historians still argue whether Paris gained more than it lost when it scrubbed itself clean. The sanitation improved, of course. The smell shifted. But something else vanished, a kind of intimate urban rhythm, an unspoken partnership between city and animal citizen and cleanup crew. You pass a courtyard once packed with piglets and children. It's empty now. Clean. Quiet. Too quiet. And in the stillness you realize cleanliness isn't always clarity. And order doesn't always make sense. Sometimes the filth tells the better story. You make your way into the marais now. Tidy, curated, whispering wealth, but once a maze of smells, shrieks and snorts. It's hard to imagine pigs here now. Everything gleams. Even the window glass looks self-satisfied. But memory has a way of clinging to stone. You stop at a corner where an old woman is selling roasted chestnuts. She gestures to the worn bricks beneath your feet. That used to be where they'd feed 'em, she says, handing you a paper cone. All lined up tails twitching, waiting for potato skins and luck. You crunch a chestnut. Look down. No pigs, of course, but you swear you can still hear one somewhere in the distance snorting with mild disapproval. Mainstream historical fact. The transformation of Paris under the 19th century modernization efforts, most famously under Baron Haussmann, was a deliberate attempt to erase the clutter and chaos of the old city. Pigs weren't just inconvenient. They were symbolic of the disorder that planners were trying to pave over with boulevards and symmetry. You walk along one such boulevard now, wide, clean, designed for spectacle. But back then, this space was a tangle of carts and kitchens, shouting neighbors, and yes, pigs with names. A wrought iron bench has a carving on its leg, subtle, almost missed. It's a pig smiling. You sit. Across the street, a small bookstore's window displays an oddity, Les Cochons de Paris, a forgotten history. Inside, dusty pages whisper stories too soft for the official version. Quirky anecdote. One writer claimed that before the pigs were banned, you could measure the wealth of a neighborhood by the tone of its pig squeals. Apparently, better-fed pigs grunted more politely. You chuckle, and then sigh, because here's the truth, the pigs weren't elegant. They didn't smell great. They knocked things over, bit things, occasionally ruined pastries. But they worked. They connected people. They made the city function messily, organically, hilariously. And now, that connection is gone, replaced by paper ordinances, paving stones, and the faintest ghost of a grunt beneath the marble. You lean back on the bench, and imagine the past trailing behind you like a curly tail in the dust. Night folds over Paris again, smoother this time. The gas lamps flicker. Carriages clatter by. A man in a hat shouts something about oysters. But beneath the urban rhythm, something is missing. No soft thuds of hooves. No squeals echoing through alleys. No impromptu parades of pigs chasing a melon down the hill. You're on the Ile de la Cité now, the old heart of Paris, where Notre Dame rises behind you like a sermon cast in stone. It's beautiful, imposing, and entirely pigless. And yet, as you walk past the cathedral's side walls, you notice a stone carving tucked near the base. Not a saint, not a gargoyle, a pig. Small, smiling, tail curled, not part of the official architecture. Someone carved it later quietly, reverently. Mainstream historical fact. Though pigs disappeared from the streets of Paris, they didn't disappear from the memory of it. Poems, paintings, and satire kept them alive. Folk songs remembered them with affection. And the older generation, those who grew up ankle-deep in alley slop and trotters, spoke of them the way others spoke of first loves fondly, and with a little disbelief. You step into a small square behind a bakery where the light is low. and the bricks still look honest. Here, a mural, weathered but visible, shows a pig in profile surrounded by children, a woman tossing scraps, and a man with a broom smiling like he's in on a secret. You're beginning to think the pigs never really left. Quirky trace. Some modern Parisians, eccentric, romantic, or perhaps just wise, still keep a ceramic pig near the kitchen or garden, not for luck, for memory. To remind us, one woman once said that sometimes the city only worked because something was willing to eat what we wouldn't. You walk on your footsteps echoing. The shops are closed now, the shutters drawn, and yet you hear it, not sound, not exactly, more like the echo of movement, the memory of mischief. You smile, because every alley feels just a little too wide, every shadow a little too warm, and you wonder if maybe when the city sleeps, the pigs return. Not to clean, not to scavenge, just to remind us that once long ago Paris was held together by hooves and hunger, and it worked. You're heading north now, where the old city bleeds into newer districts, wider roads, straighter lines, buildings with fewer secrets. The scent of bakeries still lingers, but something else hangs in the air: sterility, predictability. Paris has grown up, and in doing so it's cleaned up, maybe a little too well. But every once in a while something breaks through. You pass a courtyard garden tucked behind a cafe where the roses bloom rebelliously and the ivy climbs with intent. And right in the center, in the statue, a modest bronze pig mid-snort perched atop a plaque. A coquille nettoyante avant que nous sassions comment. To those who cleaned before we knew how. You laugh softly. Because it's true. Mainstream historical fact. The eventual rise of formal waste management systems in the 19th century collection cart sewer expansion dedicated cleaning crews transformed Paris. It became a model of urban sanitation. But historians note how long the informal systems persisted, especially in working-class districts. Pigs weren't just placeholders, they were the prototype. You sit near the statue and pull out that pamphlet you picked up days ago, Les Cochons et la République. It's silly, satirical, full of drawings of pigs wearing powdered wigs and sitting in parliament. But beneath the jokes is something else. A kind of reverence. Quirky excerpt one page reads, "The pig is not chaos, it is adaptation with a snout." You nod. That sounds about right. A child walks past holding a stuffed animal, no bear, no bunny. A plush pig. She drags it by one leg, humming, entirely unaware that her toy once held up an empire of apple cores and broken crockery. Historians still argue whether pigs were symbols of Paris's poverty or ingenuity, whether their removal marked progress or erasure. But no one denies they were effective and unforgettable, because how do you forget the creature that turned your city's mess into something manageable? You walk down Rue des Trois Frères, where a street artist has chalked a mural of a pig dressed as Napoleon raising a mop like a saber. Below it in loopy cursive, "Make Paris dirty again." You chuckle, then pause, because you can't decide if it's a joke or a wish, and maybe it's both. You end your long walk in Montmartre, where the cobbled paths twist like spilled ribbon and the city opens wide below you. Lights flicker in the distance. The skyline glows faintly under the hush of stars. It's quieter up here, less clutter, less chaos, but also perhaps a little less alive. You sit on a stone bench beside the final lamppost of the climb. Behind you, artists pack up their stalls. A woman plays accordion down the hill. A breeze rolls in, and for a second you almost forget. Almost. But then from the edge of your vision movement, not a person, not a dog, a pig. Well, probably not a real one. Could be a trick of light, could be someone's pet, could be your very tired imagination reminding you what matters. Still it snorts, and then it's gone. Mainstream historical fact. By the mid-19th century, the pig was functionally erased from Paris street life. City ordinances had caught up. Sanitation had industrialized. But the memory of pigs, persistent, hard-working, ridiculous, endearing, lived on in stories, folk memory, even statues and slang. They were the guardians of a pre-modern rhythm the city would never quite recover. You take a slow breath and realize that maybe progress isn't just about paving over the past, it's about honoring the creatures who carried you here. Creatures who made space livable, who asked for nothing but scraps, who cleaned your messes when no one else would. Quirky final thought. There's a small festival held in a village outside Paris each year where people dress as pigs and march through the town square. They toss vegetable peels, dance in straw, and crown a king of garbage. The event, half parody, half prayer, ends with a toast to the ones who ate our shame. You watch as a man walks past with a basket of baguettes. A child skips behind him humming. Somewhere a door creaks open. You hear laughter. And underneath it all, the faintest, gentlest grunt. You close your eyes. Because it's late now. The streets are calm, and Paris, scrubbed and sensible, still remembers what it was when pigs ruled the alleys and cleaned what others wouldn't. Not for glory, not for money. Just because someone had to. So sleep now. Let the past rest. Let the pigs dream. They've earned it. And now as the night stretches long and soft, let every image from today's journey settle gently behind your eyes. The muddy alleys, the ribbon snouts, the parade of porcine persistence. You've walked a city that once survived, not through marble and law, but through hoofbeats and rootings through creatures who never asked for praise. Let that idea warm you now, that sometimes the greatest labor happens in silence, that not all heroes need uniforms. Some come with curly tails and snouts full of apple skins. Let the sounds fade, the squeals, the cartwheels, the market voices. Let the smells evaporate, leaving only the memory of warmth and salt and soil. Let the pigs walk home wherever home now is. And let yourself drift too. You are safe. You are still. The work is done. Paris sleeps cleaner than it was. Because once long ago a pig ate something no one else wanted and changed a city. So rest easy now. You've seen the hidden history. You've listened to the soft stories. And the pigs. They thank you for noticing. Good night.